This is a 2003 Hyundai Elantra. It's here for the clutch slipping. It's got over 100,000 miles on it. I checked the hydraulic slave cylinder for it staying on, but it's just wore out. First thing I want to do is remove the battery terminals. Take this heat shielding off. And take the air cleaner out of it and off the throttle body. This heat shielding's got some Phillips screws here and a 10mm there. 1, 2, 3. I'll get this battery up out of it. Got a little space opened up now with the air cleaner and the battery's out of it. Cables are off the battery. I'm going to start by taking this clip off and this pin out, because this slave cylinder is leaking brake fluid. Otherwise you could just have to take this arm off of here anyway, and it's splined with an extra tooth, so it'll go back the same way that it comes off without. You might put a mark on it just for easy, fast reference, but I don't think there's only so much it can travel when the throwout bearing's against the pressure plate. But these pins just push this headed hook down and then slide it out. Just push that hook down and slide the pin out. I'm going to go ahead and zap this slave cylinder off. Take a 14mm and take this nut loose on this arm and lift it off. After your slave cylinder is removed, unplug this backup switch. Just push tabs down and release it. And the speed sensor that's down in the back. So that's the same tab. I've laid the slave cylinder up here beside the master cylinders, and take this battery cable clip loose. Then you can take your arm loose anytime before you take the bell housing bolts out. Then take the clips out of the shifter linkage back here. Got the same hairpin looking clip there. To remove this shifter linkage, just pull this pin and lift this big washer out, slip the linkage off, and then there's two 12mm bolts holding the bracket down back here. Remove those. This has a little plastic deal. When you pull the linkage loose, it wraps around the end of the shifter shaft. You don't want to lose that. It looks like the taller part goes to the back. I'll put a little T on that for top. The shift cable is free and clear. Put the linkage back here, tied up behind the brake booster. This clutch fork arm absolutely has to be removed due to the nature of the clutch design to get the transmission off of it, the pressure plate, because the throwout bearings fastened to it. And somebody's been in here before, but it has a dead tooth on it, and then it accommodates the same pattern as a raised up tooth. If you've got a bad memory about putting bolts back where they belong, You just put them back in the place to come out of. Generally, put the slave cylinder bolts back in the transmission housing, so I don't have to worry about losing them or mixing them up with shorter ones or longer ones. And this arm come off with a nut and a lock washer and a flat washer. You can take a bread tie or zip strap and tie all three pieces together so you'll know how they go back. While you're up on top, you can get that bell housing bolt above the drive axle. It's a 14mm. Back bell housing bolt above the drive axle. Take these starter bolts, 14mm starter bolts out. It's two 14mm holding the starter on. I'm going to go ahead and get this bottom one out before I take the top one loose and put a load on the one that's down in the hole. Starter's loose. Now there's two 17mm bell housing bolts. One's underneath that harness. This one on the back has an engine ground eyelet under it. I would say take this bolt here out, but it's missing already, and it had a bracket hanger under it. The bolt's gone. So on to the next round. I just decided to walk the starter and its harness out of there. I didn't want it pushing on the transmission while I'm putting it together. It's bad enough without that. It'll be alright there. Set it off anywhere around the front. So I went ahead and bungee corded up the wire harness. So bell housing's free and clear. Go ahead and zap those two bolts loose on this engine mount behind the radiator. Get this nut loose from this pass-through bolt on this top engine mount in the rear. Now I'm going to crack these two loose. Once these two bolts are broken loose, just break these two here loose on this mount, but don't take them out. So you get these two bolts, let's jack it up, start taking the wheel off, plastic. Just be sure and loosen these, not take them out, and loosen these. Take the nut off of this pass-through bolt. Now that all the top side work's done, we'll go underneath and start working on the bottom. All the bell housing bolts that are reachable on top is taken out. The starter's off. This clutch fork arm's off. The wiring's dislodged from any brackets touching the transmission, and then shift linkage is off of it. Raised the car about 18 inches off the ground. set jack stands under it. I took the driver's side wheel off of it. This is a placement for the jack stand. Drain the fluid out of the transmission. It takes a 24 millimeter, or I think a 15/16, either one. That's the drain, and this is the fill plug. Suppose I could have loosened the fill plug up to get that to come out a little better. That's some black looking stuff. Doesn't look like very much. A few nasties on the magnet. Go ahead and let that drain. I'll take this plastic piece. It's got a couple 10 millimeters in it. Out of the way. Go ahead and straighten this quarter pin up and remove it. It looks like the nuts turned on that and bound it up a little bit. Take this quarter pin out. Take the tie rod end loose. I'll wire brush these spindle nuts and bolts off for the strut mount. Take them loose. Take this brake line 12 millimeter out. Bracket. Brake line bracket 12 millimeter out. 1 1/4 inch socket fits this just fine. You can either hold the brake or put a screwdriver down in one of the rotor cooling pins. Keep it from turning while you have your screwdriver or punch. Yeah, if you don't have just exactly the right tool to fit the spindle where the tie rod end goes in, you can just jack the weight of the vehicle up by the nut flush with the end of the tie rod stud and just tap the side of it, and it'll do it. Usually. I got the nut off of here. I gotta put a wheel bearing in this too. This nut's a 17 millimeter. Zap these two 17 millimeter nuts off of this strut and just took a hammer and tapped the bolts out. The spindle's loose. Let's get the axle loose. Alright. I think a strut mounts something else. I don't think I've ever seen one that easy. Wow. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and pop the drive axle out, just so it won't damage it. Be sure not to pull on these drive axles when you're walking this spindle and wheel bearing assembly back. Just take a push in on the axle or pry as the spindle comes away from it. Pry on the axle. You don't want to separate these joints or you'll have a problem. Sometimes you have to replace them, sometimes you can put them back together, but it's not a good thing to stress them out. I'm going to go ahead and pop this axle out. tie rod separator. Easy most of the time. I'll go ahead and dislodge the other side drive axle from here. Go ahead and remove your passenger side front wheel. Take the two bolts out, 17mm, holding the spindle to the strut. Then pop the drive axle loose in the transmission. Let the spindle tilt back, removing the axle from the transmission just to get it clear of the transmission, so you don't have to fight the axle and put the transmission back up on the engine same time. It's complicated that way. It's a lot easier just to take this wheel and a couple spindle bolts out and tilt the axle away from the transmission, then fish it all back in there when you're putting it back together. I went ahead and mounted a jack stand beside the exhaust pipe with a piece of wood on top of it. It's just like a 1x2 piece to spread the load out on the aluminum when the weight comes down on it. Just kind of mount it centered. I'm going to go ahead and remove this through bolt on this rear mount. And remove the bracket, the engine mount. The rear mount's out of there. That's everything it entails. If you want to, you can set another jack stand underneath the transmission. It's still being held up by the rear mount, but if you made a mistake and took too many bolts out of the mount, it could be a semi-hazardous for the transmission to come down, although the stand would catch some of it, but not all of it. Now the front mount behind the cooling fans on the radiator, disassemble this mount, take the through bolt out, and one bolt left going up through the frame out, and remove that mount. 14mm. That's the front mount and what it consisted of. It should be a little wobbly now. Put a jack or jack stand, anything underneath the center of the frame, directly behind the driver's side wheel. Anything to control the frame's descent as you loosen the bolts up on this side, so it doesn't just drop or stress anything out. Be letting the frame down just a little bit, but not enough to hurt the steering column or shaft. Once the jack or stands in place, loosen these two bolts on this triangular plate. I want to loosen this frame nut to the last few threads to the front of the frame on the driver's side. Go ahead and remove the front frame bolt on the driver's side. Go ahead and loosen the front frame bolt on the passenger side, about halfway down. the frame's really not wanting to drop down anyway. But now I'll go ahead and move your jack to the center axis of the transmission. It's that bump is center, so the jack's got to be kind of centered around it. Maybe a spacer on this side, 2x4 or something. I'm using my homemade jack adapter for smaller transmissions. Okay, I've got a jack mounted underneath of the transmission. It's really not that heavy. The jack's just more or less a safety thing. It'll help out, I guess, to keep it supported and slide it over to this frame, the back of it over to the frame. Now I'm going to go ahead and take, now the engine and transmission is lifted up by this jack, just took the load off of it. Go ahead and take these mount bolts out of this inner wheel well. 14 millimeters. I'll come up and pull this screw bolt out. Best way to check if you got a load on it is whether this bolt comes out or not. Go ahead and finish taking these 14 millimeters out of the body or the upper mount. That's what there is for that mount. Transmission housing for the mount should be Loctited back. Went ahead and removed the backup light switch on top of the transmission. The backup light switch is a 24 millimeter. Long one to the front. All the bolts are out of the bell housing and the gap's starting to open up. Transmission's sitting on a jack. We'll get it back and get it up over that frame right back here, the differential. Kind of had to wiggle the transmission back through the frame and the body, but got a good enough gap where I can grease up the splines and the bearing tube and set the clutch alignment tool in there. I put a clutch in it and then flatten the flywheel out and have the flywheel turned.